Hey there, everyone. Welcome back to the Happy Meter podcast, a chance for two best friends to come together and talk about the Happy Meter. This is the first episode of season 2. Justin and I are so proud to have out there. It was 10 episodes where we introduced you to the Happy Meter, a philosophy that guides us in balancing our life's passions, joys, and drives alongside financial wellness. And as we get into season 2, I know that we have a lot of really great topics. But perhaps the thing I'm most excited about is getting to have a little bit more time with Justin. So Justin, happy summer, happy August. How are you?
Hey, Kevin. I'm feeling great. It feels good to be back home in Baltimore. It's really weird that I'm downstairs recording in my office and you're upstairs in your room in the same household. But it feels good to be back home with you guys after pretty much been up in New York or doing a little bit of traveling since March. So it feels good.
Yeah, we got into kind of a rhythm, using Zoom as a way to create this podcast. And we've gotten some good feedback generally about audio and that sort of thing. So it makes sense, as weird as it is, that we're only separated by 2 floors. I want to congratulate you real quick. I see you've got a Garritt Financial polo on. I see you got the Garritt Financial in the background. I know that business has been growing and has been positive experience for you. And I love seeing the Garritt Financial Solutions stuff out and about.
Yeah, it's been so fun. Since March, there's been, I think, a lot of teachers, nurses, firefighters. We've had quite a few folks reach out for assistance, and I think it's been one of those times where I think a lot of people have a little extra time in their hands. And what's amazing, I'm getting people to reach out that want to take this time to better themselves and to paint a more or a better financial picture for them in their future. So yeah, it's been really busy since March. It's been so fun. I love doing this work. And I just know there's going to be a substantial amount of people now that 10, 20 years from now, their futures will look much different because they made choices now in their 20s and 30s and 40s. So pretty exciting. I just love this. You could tell I just love talking about this stuff.
I'm thrilled that I can say that I'm one of those people too who's going to benefit. You mentioned a lot of people having a lot of time on their hands, and that's partly because, as everyone knows, we continue to experience the COVID pandemic, especially in the United States, although it's also still going on around the world.
Yeah.
You've had the chance to travel a little bit, which I know we're going to talk about. My summer's been much more limited, right? Like for our audience, I am a bit of a house cat. I'm not normally one to go out in the woods or the sun or really most of nature feels like it's out to get me. But I did a backpacking trip recently with just a small group of friends and one adorable dog. And we went to Loyalsock in Pennsylvania. It was near World's End State Park in Pennsylvania. An ominous name, but a great park. And so yeah, I got to get out there and do that. You and I went for a great hike the other day, Justin. We got like 7 miles or so in at, oh my goodness, it's near Towson. It was
Lake Roland.
Lake Roland. So any Marylanders in the Baltimore area, Lake Roland is gorgeous. And it was a really great chance to spend some time catching up with Justin. What about you? What are some of your summer highlights?
Well, I was up in New York for about the first 2-3 months of COVID. And then I actually ended up all the way in, I decided to book a flight and flew out to California. And my girlfriend and I did a road trip from Oakland, and then we went up to Redwoods, and then we went to Yosemite. We went to a place called Lassen. It was all of those things were socially distant. It was nice to just have alone time with her and be in nature for about 2 weeks. It was lovely. When we were deciding about travel, we wanted to make sure it was going to be somewhere where we're away from cities. And that we just had some time alone. And we thought about, there's certainly risk here. We were in a hotel room for some nights. But there's some things that we did along the ride that I opened, lessen the risk a little bit. I know when we got on a flight, each time we wiped down the area around us, never got it really out of our seats at all. And then same thing when we got the rental car, we wiped everything down there. We didn't go in any restaurants throughout the period of time. When we were in the hotel, same thing, we wiped everything down. So did some of those steps, but we certainly put ourselves a little bit at risk for sure, taking the risk and traveling.
Yeah, I'm definitely not someone who's ready yet to fly, but I know that you've been safe, and I know it's also been many weeks since you had that experience, and you've been healthy and good this whole time.
Yeah.
I know that we're probably going to circle back and talk about school, and we'll probably talk about a few other elements too. But since we're discussing your travel, do you mind sharing for those of us like myself who haven't been to an airport now? I mean, in many, many months, haven't even really thought about travel. Could you talk about some of the company and sort of systemic efforts that these companies are doing to try to keep people safe?
Well, yeah. So, I'm a big Southwest person. We live in Baltimore, and that's the main hub here is for Southwest Airlines. So I love Southwest for a million different reasons. But even during this pandemic, they introduced that no middle seats were going to be occupied over from now all the way until Halloween. So when you're on a flight, unless you're traveling with somebody, you've got quite a bit more space on a plane, which is I really liked. Also, the boarding process looked a little bit different. If you've been on Southwest before, there's posts with numbers and letters, and you line up about 60 people at a time on those posts. And during this time, they started boarding a little bit earlier, and they only allowed 5 people at a time. And there was stickers on the floor. So it was like, instead of A1 through 30, it was A1 through 5, then 6 through 10. And it was very spaced out coming on. You didn't, as soon as you came in the airport, you had to have a mask on all the way through the flight. Can't take the mask off for any reason. Also during the flight, and we were going from Baltimore to San Jose, so 6 hours. The only service that is happening, so there's no drink service, no alcohol service. There's never any food on Southwest except snacks anyway. But they come around once and they give you a can that's not open with a plastic straw for water, and then they give you a snack pack. Besides that, there's not really any interaction between the flight attendants and the passengers on the flight. So just pretty much come in, sit down, get in your area, keep your mask on, and then leave at the end. So that was the experience. I will say I was on 4 planes over the past 2-3 months, and every single person was kind of in their zone. The flight was really quiet, all of them I've been on, because people are just kind of in their little space. There's very few people getting up unless it's an emergency to go to the bathroom. So overall, I felt really safe on a plane. And also in California, the hotels I thought were really clean, masks on when we came in. The stores were really spaced out. I was overall pretty impressed with that. And the national parks also did a really good job. They had certain amount of cars only allowed in Yosemite, which is typically a much more populated national park. So yeah, overall, I was happy we went.
Yeah. With thinking about your description of Southwest and the flights, it's a for-profit company that is trying to find a way to continue offering its service, even in the midst of this extraordinary time. And so they're able to distill their service down to really, like, we get you from A to B. And then, like you said, we're not really chatting. We're masked the entire time. We are spaced out, all that stuff. You and I are teachers, though. So we are in an industry, nonprofit, but we're in an industry that's trying to offer a service. And it's such I would argue, a much more complicated procedure, because we can't distill teaching and all that down to just, we're getting you from A to B. Do you want to share? So you're a Baltimore City Public Schools teacher. Yep. Do you want to share what the system is doing for you guys?
Yeah, so about maybe 5 weeks ago, 6 weeks ago, they did announce that we were going to be virtual learning only from now until the middle of October. I think most teachers are under the assumption, or at least most of my colleagues are on the assumption, we'll be continuing probably through holiday break. But right now they've committed to virtual from now until the middle of October. So I actually started back, my school starts about 3 weeks earlier than the traditional Baltimore City Public Schools. So we started last week on Wednesday, and there was almost 200 staff members on a Zoom call for our introduction call on Wednesday. Our principals did a wonderful job at providing some asynchronous work, so we were able to do stuff on our own a little bit more and come back to meetings that were on Zoom. So we've got a pretty intensive schedule for 7 to 8 hours, but it's a mix between having to be online with your team the whole time, as well as doing a lot of on your own work. So that's where we are now. We start kids right after Labor Day, so we have about 3 weeks to get things in order. I'm super excited about having to really start as a first-year teacher again. I've got to figure out all the Zoom stuff. I got to figure out what a class period is going to look like on Zoom, and how to motivate students when I'm not in person with them. So it's challenging, but I'm excited.
Yeah, it's a brave new world.
Yeah. What about you, Kev? What's going on in your school world?
Yeah, so I teach at a private school, and we are, as a consequence of that, able to kind of do, as long as it follows broader governmental restrictions, we're able to do whatever our administration wants, which can be, I suppose, a bit of a catch-22, We look at our colleagues and our peers that are in the public schools, and they're all, including Baltimore County, Howard County, all around us, where our students are coming from, and they're all virtual, through October or the first semester, what have you. But as a private school with a little bit more space, with less concerns of things like busing, we don't, need to offer meals and some of these other kinds of things. We have more technological infrastructure. Our admin sees there's a chance that we could do hybrid. And if we do hybrid, I don't think there's anyone that would dispute that hybrid is probably, for most students, a better teaching and learning experience than just being virtual. So we're trying to figure out, as a faculty as well as an administration, the extent to which this can be done safely. Should we begin virtual, then go 25%, then go 50%? We're incorporating masks as part of our dress code and uniform. So our students are going to wear masks with the insignia of my school, but they're actually going to have their names on them as well, so that teachers can know, especially their new students, especially incoming freshmen, that they can have an identity and be known. But yeah, we're still in a really kind of wiggle room space. We have a big meeting in a few days where I think some things are going to be hashed out. But as of right now, I would say it's pretty up in the air, and we're not totally sure what's going to happen. So strange times.
Well, Kev, actually, also you had a summer school experience. I think you were probably one of the first teachers, definitely probably in the state, maybe the country, to have an in-school type person situation going on over the summer. Can you tell us a little bit about what summer looked like for you?
Sure. So my July was especially focused on teaching summer school. It always is. It's a chance for me to supplement my income a little bit, also doing something I love, as you know. And this year they wanted to do our incoming freshmen in person with a kind of hybrid model so we could start experimenting. As a consequence of that, instead of just teaching my film class, which I did do, and that was all online, synchronous, amazing. But in addition to that, and the usual class I teach, which is study skills for incoming freshmen, it's somewhat remedial, but it's about the new school's culture, our expectations, note-taking, study habits, all that good stuff. Mm-hmm. I also taught the remedial language arts class. So, bringing some students who are a little bit behind up to my school's freshman standard. Mm-hmm. And yeah, we did it in person. It was a joy. I actually ended up loving it. Even though we were masked the whole time and it had so many difficulties, it felt so much more like authentic teaching compared to what we were doing in our scrambled virtual efforts, in late March through June. We start out in a giant lecture hall. So it'd be me, 25 students, everyone masked, spaced out, Clorox wipes, hand sanitizer, and a lot of really specific processes that needed to be followed as we went in and out of the space. Right. I digitized everything. I didn't want to hand papers out. I didn't want to receive papers. Students had to come with devices, all that. But then they actually wanted to more authentically experiment with hybrid, because that lecture hall thing can't be scaled up for our whole community.
Right.
So the school bought a sound bar, one of those really nice speakers that people sometimes have the base of their television, with a mounted camera, webcam basically, with 360-degree rotation. And they put me in a real classroom with a whiteboard and everything, projector. And it would be me and 10 students spaced out. They ripped out the desk we weren't going to use, so students were kind of limited. We're masked. The other half of the guys are calling into a Microsoft Teams meeting. I'm able to share my screen. If they pinned me, they could see my writing on the whiteboard. We had better participation all around, whether they were calling in or in person. We had probably more authentic teaching even there. I really enjoyed it. It's got its weaknesses, for sure. But if that can be done safely, it was a positive experience.
That's wonderful. So, during the summer when you only had a dozen or two students in a large lecture hall, made sense. It's reasonable. The issue is when you're talking about 2,000 students needing to be in a school building, that's the challenge of going into the fall. I mean, we all want to be in the classroom with students, but of course we want to, do it safely, and very challenging when I know my school, we have 1,500, students, K through 8 in one small building, and doing that right now safely is obviously a challenge. And so it'll be really interesting what the next many months look like, and we'll see what happens, but I appreciate you sharing all that, Kev.
Absolutely. Thank you for asking, Justin.
Yeah. So I do want to jump in a little bit more into now some finance stuff. So Kev, we started, I think you and I really started heavily talking about finances together a few years ago, right? And this summer was a remarkable summer for you.
Yep.
in a lot of different ways. We have so many celebrations to go. So I would just love if you can, for some of our new listeners that are starting on season 2, would you mind kind of just sharing out kind of where you were financially and a lot of the stress that was happening in your life about a year ago? And then, what happened, where you are now?
Sure. At this point, I'm almost proud to say I don't remember all of the exact specifics of the numbers of the problem, but
Yep.
the broad strokes were, I had started allowing myself to get caught up in credit card sort of game, right? Like earning points and that sort of thing. I did not get in the healthy habit of paying off my card right away or regularly. Certainly always doing at least the minimum, but that APR started kicking in. And I had at least one card that had 30% APR. I had another one that was something like 18, and those two cards got me in a lot of trouble. So I had a lot of credit card debt,
Hmm.
and it was just mounting and mounting. It's just a hole, and you really can't start investing in your retirement or your future if you are in that kind of a hole. And so then it was a matter of buckling down, working with you on a budget, but also mindsets about paying it off, feeling good about that. Play your game financially, not the credit card company's game.
Hmm.
And I was able to get out of my credit card debt by leveraging zero balance transfer cards
Hmm.
that allowed me for over a year to make payments directly to the principal debt as opposed to really just paying off interest to companies.
Hmm.
And so that was the first real step, but then it's been you teaching me so much about actual investing and in yourself and your future and the happy meter, all that kind of stuff. And yeah, we are now in a very different place. Do you mind if I share a little bit about what you and I were able to do?
Sure, but one step there. I think the credit card piece was certainly something that had to go, and you did it. You set a plan out. I think you knocked those out in like a year. That was last year, right? Now, what I remember was a kind of a breaking point for you, and I remember seeing your face feeling defeated. Was the point where your credit card debt was just about gone, but then all of a sudden you forgot that last summer you got paid without being taxed on some summer school
Oh yeah,
money. And
yeah,
it
yeah.
was January or February of this year where you came to me after you were finally felt you were at zero, like your debt's gone. And all of a sudden you get I think a $800 or $1,000 tax bill from the government that you had to
Mhm.
pay since you didn't pay taxes on that small amount over the summer last year, right? And I remember you feeling defeated.
Oh
And
yeah.
at that point was when it was, I think, one of those moments where you could have gave up and got really discouraged. But instead, you realize at that point where I need an emergency fund so
Hmm.
that when these things happen, car breaks down, which we could happen any day for our cars, Kev.
Sure could.
A tax bill at the end of the year, your dryer goes out in your house, your roof goes out on top of your house, whatever happens, like these types of things are going to happen in your life. And it is extremely stressful when you don't have a safety net to fall back on. And
Yes.
so you were at zero, you just climbed the mountain, right? You're just there at zero. And all of a sudden, crap, $800 I got to pay. What am I going to do? I just got out of debt. And I think that was, I remember, was a turning point for you. And I remember you felt discouraged, but then jumped on it.
Yep.
And I think really from there all the way until about 3 months, maybe 3 weeks ago, you just been on a tear. So
Yep.
talks a little bit about that. This now really since February until now.
Yeah, well, and you're absolutely right that this notion of I think when I didn't have as much of a handle on my finances, I would have told myself that I did, but clearly I didn't.
Yep.
There's a lot of anxiety in that day to day,
Yep.
and I think a lot of our listeners probably have felt that, or maybe are feeling that right now.
Right.
And then when you finally get to the place that you've guided me to, where you have I don't have a goal of being wealthy.
Mm-hmm.
But I do have a goal of being responsible with my finances and living my life responsibly so that when these kinds of things happen, I can handle it.
Yep.
I know exactly how much I have and I can handle a big swing. And so, yeah, by saving money, partly because of our COVID restrictions, but also a lot of mindset changes.
Yep.
By saving money, then also pursuing a really aggressive month of July in summer school teaching where I was compensated for every single course and I was compensated fairly. And I earned it as well. I was able to fill my emergency reserve in keeping with a goal that you and I set.
Mm-hmm.
I was able to also start putting a little bit aside into a general investing account so that I'm through compound interest, starting to actually make a little bit of extra on top. But then the one that kind of came out of nowhere, which was really exciting, was that we had enough left over to fill 1 year of Roth IRA for my retirement. And you noted, because you've been looking into some of this stuff, that this year, because of COVID and other kinds of legislation that have gone through, I was able to fill that for the previous year.
Right.
And so this idea that I have now an emergency reserve. If something bad happens, I got it, and I'm not worried about it. That I also have started investing even more into my retirement one day and was able to max that out. We also increased my contribution to my school's retirement significantly. We went from something like 8% to currently, this might change, but currently we're over 15% going in there. And then, of course, also finally investing and doing so wisely. And it is a thrill for me, Justin, to go in and look at just the numbers moving. And again, I don't want to be rich. I don't want to be wealthy, but golly, I get to retire one day. This is pretty exciting.
Yeah, it's been an amazing 360. I've been loving watching this. But you know what? It really came down to two things, Kev. Number one, step one was to get organized and have a plan, right? Like, we knew our goal was pay off the credit card debt, build an emergency fund. Then when we're there, then we can start thinking about where do we want to see our wealth grow, in what bucket, whether it's a Roth or a traditional IRA, whether it was increasing your 403b at work, or whether it was increasing your general investment account. But the step there was just to get organized and have a plan, right? Because that got you excited. Because step one was to do this. You got to cross it off and celebrate. Step two is to do this. And I have found that the clients that I work with, having those set steps and where they're going is really motivating for folks. And then step two for you was you changed your lifestyle a little bit, but you actually just started to assign your dollars to specific things. So we now have an automatic contribution for you that's set up to your 403b at school, and you have an automatic contribution that goes towards your general investment account. Before it was your emergency account. And you frame that as, this is like a bill, but it's a bill that's paying me.
Yep.
And the budget allowed us to show you that you can still live an optimized life using the happy meter, but you were able to take that extra waste that was happening in a typical month, trim some of that, and use that to be able to start accelerating your goals. And that's really the secret here, is take your budget, income minus expenses, there's a leftover amount. Whatever that leftover amount is, we want to drive towards those steps, whether it's paying off your debt, whether it's building a cash reserve emergency fund, or for where you are now, which is literally, now we're pedal to the metal on building wealth.
Yep.
It's pretty exciting. So congratulations, Kev. Like, I'm really proud of where you are now. And now we're just talking about, now you've got a lot of little workers working for you here, right? You've got all this investment compounding going on. And if something was to happen, that's an emergency, it would suck. Like, something happens to your car, it wouldn't be fun. However, this is not something we have to go into debt for again, because you have a safety net. And talk about what that feels like, to have that sense of security. Man, that's what it's awesome. So I'm really proud of you, Kev.
Thank you, Just.
Yeah.
Seeing the time progressing in our recording here, I know that one of the things we really wanted to get to was a kind of a pop quiz, right? And so we have a few things that we might circle back to depending on time, but you were so giddy when you told me that you wanted to give me a pop quiz on season 1.
Yep.
And I'm looking forward to hopefully our listeners kind of participating in this as well.
Yep.
I'm a little nervous. This is you being a great teacher. You're doing a check for understanding on me and all our listeners. I'm hoping I get an A, because I am the co-host of this show. But for all of our listeners out there who are driving around, going to work, or maybe just going for a run or something, try to plug in. I'm going to give a beat before I answer. And I'd love for you guys to see if you're learning lessons too, if you're retaining the information, maybe you're even applying the information in your own life and in your own journey. And I really hope I beat all of you, but I'm also very aware that some of this doesn't come naturally to me. So, all right, I got my pencil, my pen. I'm ready for this pop quiz. Here we go.
All right, so we got 10 questions, Kev. Are we ready? Okay, so this is a recap on season 1, our first 10 episodes. So let's start with number 1. Question 1, why is the podcast called The Happy Meter? Start off real easy.
Easy. I already said this in this episode. Yes. So for our listeners, if you just paid attention early, you should know this. Happy Meter is really your philosophy, and it has to do with the balance of financial wellness with the things that really bring us joy. And one of the things I liked most about it is that we have friends who are in serious relationships, or friends who are married, and sometimes there's a happy meter for that union. But then there's also 2 very distinct and sometimes somewhat opposed happy meters for the members of that union. But the point is figuring out what drives you, what really makes you happy, and then figuring out how much that should cost, that kind of thing.
Right. I just find there's so often you look around and people are purchasing things. Oftentimes it's material things like cars and clothes and things like that, where it might bring you about this much sense, like a tiny little bit of sense of joy in the second that you make this purchase. But then because of that choice, you're not able to take that money and use it towards something that's going to bring you more long-term joy. Yeah. And so that's the recap. Thank you so much for Kevin. I think you nailed that. I got to give you one point
actually
there.
To that, the patterns of sort of quick consumption. Like, so right. I'm not much of a shopper, but if I'm not being thoughtful, and I know we have plenty of friends who are like this too, to eat something that's easy and lazy and expensive at a restaurant, even to take out or whatever, but those patterns of just quick consumption, get that out of here. It's not happening.
Absolutely. And it's also key is like folks that I work with, I'm not interested in somebody depriving themselves to meet their goals. And that's really a piece too. I know so many folks that get on a budget and just start trim. And they look back on their last 6 months and they weren't able to enjoy their life. Right. It's kind of like going on a diet and just like trimming everything awesome out of your diet. And you just, it's not going to last forever. This is a lifestyle, like mindset on we are going to think what is actually important for us in our future lives. And is these purchases right now doing that? If not, then maybe we need to think about cutting those down so that we can prepare more for the future and plan for bigger and more cooler things later in life. All right. Good work, Kevin. Number one, I think I'll give it to you. All right. Number two. What is the most important step in regards to you improving your financial outlook? What do you think is the most important step in regards to you improving your financial outlook? What do you think is the most important step? And I think we talked about this already today too.
Yeah, I feel like you might have just talked about this actually. I think that I feel like the answer you're looking for is probably, because you were just talking about it, making a budget. I think that for me, it builds on that, but I think it does have to do with sort of confronting your debt, your spending, and the money you have, which I guess is just saying a budget. I'm going to say budget. I'm saying budget.
Yeah, I think I was going for budget here. I was also, so what I'm going for is the budget there. That first budget allows you to be able to take what you're making, what you're spending, and then figure out what that gap number is. And that gap number is what I always talk about is like, that's the magic number that can be applied towards paying off debt, building an emergency fund, or planning for the future. So you can't know what that number is unless you write it down. And then you go try that budget out for 2 to 3 months to see how accurate that was. You got to have that number, that gap number, because that powerful number is going to tell you if you're on track and where that extra money should go. Because I find so too often is that people spend without assigning their dollars a task. So beautiful. I think if you mentioned paying off debt, if you mentioned building an emergency fund, if you mentioned a budget, those are all huge pillars to this. And so I'll give you credit for all three of those if you mentioned those.
I'm hearing that I'm at 100% right now. That's what I'm hearing, that I've earned an A.
2 for 2, Kev. All right. Next one was we talk about a lot, and this was, what does the power of compounding mean?
Okay. All right. I even mentioned this because it's a thing. So power of compounding, or sometimes we've said the magic of compounding. Mm-hmm. It's kind of like your branded way of saying compound interest is good and powerful. And I am not an expert on this, but I know that compound interest basically means, to me, it means your investment gets extra money, right? Interest. And then like at the end of the day, you have a new amount that's more than what you put in. And then magic, dilly, the next day you start there with like a larger amount. So it's like each day it builds a little bit more, a little bit more, and a little bit more. It's like what we said, where the little workers, like every dollar you invest is like a little worker. So you're putting your money in, it's going to build. This is not the most academic or economic answer, but that's the magic of compounding interest.
All right. I mean, you nailed it as well. Like, bottom line is, let's say you invest $100 and it makes 10%. The next year you got $100 plus the $1 was made. So now you have 101 workers that next year that are now going to make, let's say, 10%. So now you take that whole 101 and take 10% of that. And then over and over and over again, this is the idea of compounding, where it's building and snowballing. Mm-hmm. And the first few months and first few years of compounding is slow, right? Think about rolling a snowball. Man, it is a pain in the beginning when that snow is not sticking together And the one roll doesn't really get you a lot of snow, but think about after like your 20th roll, what happens to that snowball? It gets huge and huge and huge. And later on, you're 20 and 30, you're 40, you're 50. It's unbelievable, you know, what 7, 8, 9% of this big amount could be compounding year after year. You know, and we ran some numbers. I think episode 3 or 4, we talked about this, Kevin. Like if you save $200 per month for 30 years, and you just stick it in a bank, you stick it underneath your mattress, it's going to mean about $72,000. It's going to mean $72,000 for you, right? But if you invest the $200 per month over 30 years, and let's say you invested in a index fund that's matched to the S&P 500, let's just say it moves around 7% on average. That $72,000 you put in would equal to about $244,000. That's $172,000 of compounding growth over time. I mean, that's remarkable.
That's amazing.
Yep.
And I hope to do that. So.
Yep. And you're on the way. I mean, you're contributing more than $200 a month now. And so you're by a lot more. So yeah, you're crushing it. All right. Kev, 3 for 3. Let's move on to the next. How does automation increase your chances at meeting your long-term goals? How does automation increase your chances at meeting your long-term goals?
Okay. This one, for me, my life, automation, it means like the little bit that comes out of my paycheck straight to 403B. It means like the system that you and I have set up from my checking to my investment account or whatever I'm working on. Mm-hmm. I think it's ultimately what psychologists would refer to as a cognitive dissonance, right? And it's actually the same thing that the credit card companies try to mess with us with when, you know, you're using the plastic instead of cash. But here, you're paying yourself. So the automation means divorcing yourself from like your own impulse. It's putting the money where it needs to be right away. And it's mechanizing and making impersonal. You're paying yourself and investing in yourself first. Does that sound good enough?
Absolutely. You know, it's like paying off a debt, right? Except you're paying yourself. If you have the first of every month, you know that you have to pay yourself $500 a month or $400 a month, because that's going towards saving for your future house, saving for your kids' college, saving for your retirement. It's like a debt, but the debt's paying yourself.
Yeah.
And so when you automate that, where it's just something that you do automatically that you don't even have to take an action step for, it's really powerful. So I think you nailed that as well, Kev.
Yeah, it's kind of like setting a new normal, right? Like if you know how much money you're going to have in your checking account from work every 2 Fridays, but you've set it up so that some of that's going right away to something else, you're just realigning your understanding of your pocketbook. You're just realigning your understanding of your wallet. And so that way it's not a bill that you have to pay. It feels like money you never had, but turns out you're compounding it with interest and everything else and investing. So
absolutely. All right, Kev, you're nailing these. Okay, we got about 5 or 6 more. Let's do this one quick. What's Justin's favorite grocery store and why?
Okay, that's easy. And I think I agree with you. And I think any listeners who don't know or don't agree are going to learn a little something this season when we have a special episode. Your favorite, my favorite, is Aldi. It is an international sensation, and it's because they've streamlined all of their processes. They have the cheapest goods. They've got fresh vegetables and meats and all that sort of thing. And for me, they have the best veggie burgers in the game. So shout out Thai Veggie Burger from Aldi.
I think we need Southwest and Aldi's to sponsor us, Kev. I mean, we talk about them so often on here.
I'm open to it.
All right, next one. What is a fiduciary? Very important here. What is a fiduciary?
Okay, fiduciary is a fancy pants Latin word.
And you say it much better than me.
I know that it's better. So it's a legal term in general that like fiduciary and finance, and the area at the end there means adjective. But so it's an adjective that describes a financial responsibility. So like there are sometimes a board member of a school or something has a fiduciary responsibility to support, but that means like money and legal. But I also, you and I talk about it because of like coaches and advisors in finance.
Yep.
And I am going to mess it up a little bit, but I know that fiduciary means like you passed a test or something, or you took an oath that you're going to be honest with people's money, with their finances.
Yep. So there's better. Yeah, I think you did a good job at that. Out there's a lot of different financial advisors. Not all of them have to be necessarily signed fiduciaries. Okay. So there are financial advisors that may show up at your school or your place of work, that might be there selling you a product. They might even call themselves a financial advisor. These are typically people who try to sell you a retirement plan or a life insurance plan. Those folks may come across as financial advisors. I'm going to put this in quotations, but if they're there selling a product, okay, and they get commission off of selling you a product, you can imagine what they're going to try to convince you to purchase. And they might even create a fancy plan that shows that you should purchase this and why. All right. What I highly recommend, because I fell for this when I was 21 too, is to, if you need help and you are looking for a financial planner, is to make sure that person is a signed fiduciary. That means they have to act in your best interest at all times. And I even go further as to hiring a fee-only fiduciary. And what that means is they only take money from their clients. They only get paid from their clients. That means they don't get a commission off of selling you a product. So a fiduciary, fee-only financial advisor, if you need somebody to help you with your finances, that's what I highly recommend you go for.
Love it.
Yep.
I give myself the point. Do you give me the point?
Yeah, Mike, you're killing it here. I'm gonna, and if the next one's easy, and then they're gonna get a little harder here. All right, next one. Name 3 kinds of debt. Real simple. What's the 3 main kinds of debt out there we talk about?
Done. Okay. Yeah. First 2 are the ones that I know that I have had, and I think most people listening. The most insidious one, credit card debt. Boom. The second one, student loan debt. These days, if you go to college or whatever, you're probably going to have some student loan debt. Boom. Third one that I do not have, but I know that you've said it's the only kind of debt that you are ever interested in, would be like a mortgage payment. Mm-hmm. So a mortgage, I know, feels like its own thing, and you're building equity and whatnot, and it's an investment, but really it's debt. So I'm going to say credit card, student loan, and mortgage. Did you say I need to say why or anything? Did you say anything like that?
Those 3 are big ones. And then I didn't ask for 4, but another one in there was, because I actually didn't include the mortgage in there, I was thinking about car debt. The 3 types of debt I typically see most often for my clients are car debt, are student loan debt, and credit card debt. So out of those, what's the worst one, Kev, you mentioned before?
The one I said was the most insidious is credit card, and it's because of the just crazy interest rates. Sometimes there are annual fees that they sneak in there. They're just constantly devising ways to divorce people from their money, and I guess that's their game, but we shouldn't be victim to their game. Yeah,
and typically going really hard at paying off car debt and credit card debt is almost 100% of the time the right move to make. Yeah. Student loan debt and housing, your mortgage, there's sometimes a tax incentives and loan forgiveness and different things that you can apply for those. But almost 100% of the time, I'd recommend clients nail their credit card and car debt out before anything. So,
okay. By the way, I'm crushing your pop quiz.
Yes, you are. You're 8 for 8. But last 2 are a little bit more challenging. Let's see if you got this one. Number 9. What is the difference between a retirement account that is titled as traditional versus Roth? I'll say that again. What is the difference between a retirement account that is titled as a traditional versus a Roth?
This is the first one giving me actual pause. I'm a little embarrassed because we already talked about the fact that I now have a Roth. I'm of 2 minds, which probably means I'm not right. One thought is that traditional means like workplace. I have a 403B. I know some people have 401k. So maybe traditional means workplace. And Roth is like super duper bonus personal. That doesn't sound right. I know that Roth versus like regular IRA has something to do with taxes. I don't know which is which. I will submit as my answer that it's about tax. And it's a distinction about, do you pay tax when you put the money in the account, or do you pay tax in 30 years when you take it out? That's what I'm going to submit.
Good, Kevin. You nailed it on this as well. So I think 9 for 9. This is great. So you have employer-sponsored plans and you have non-employer-sponsored plans, which was, I think, what you were going through that first thing. So you can have an employer-sponsored plan. For example, a 401k, a 403b, or a 457. Those are through your work. They come directly out of your checking. Those could be traditional or Roth in that account. So you can have a traditional 401k or a Roth 401k, and I'll talk about the difference in a minute. Non-work related or non-employer related retirement plans, the most common 2 out there are a traditional IRA or a Roth IRA. And those have nothing to do with your employer. That is something that you fund separately. For example, when you just did your Roth, you just took it right from your checking and it wasn't anything to do with work, okay? Roth is when you pay right now, you contribute right now money that has already been taxed. Meaning it's in your checking account right now, it's already been taxed by your employer.
Mhm.
So Roth is after-tax money going into an account, and then it gets to grow and grow and grow and compound. And then at the end of your time when you're ready to pull it out, 59 and a half typically, at that point, that money is tax-free to pull out. On the other end, traditional, or in like a regular 401k pre-tax account is traditional, that money goes out of your paycheck prior to your employer touching it. So it gets a larger amount. So if it was, you made $1,000, you would normally be taxed, let's say 20 or 30% and lose $200 or $300. This is taken before anybody touches it. It goes into your retirement account and it grows and grows and grows and grows. But then later on, when you want to go pull that out, you'll have to pay normal income tax on that. But it had, 20, 30 years for that money to grow at a larger amount and compound over time. But just know you're going to be paying tax on the back end. So based on the person's current taxes right now, sometimes it's better for somebody to contribute to a Roth. Sometimes it's better to contribute towards your traditional. And, to speak to a fiduciary financial planner to make that decision for you is an important thing that could lead to a substantial amount of tax savings by being in the right bucket. So,
I'm hearing that I did actually get that point.
you did. Awesome.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
The difference literally is, do you want to be taxed now or do you want to be taxed later? And it really is based on right now is where you are in your tax bracket. And do you think you're going to be making a lot more later on in life? And when does it make sense for you to pull out?
Right.
Yeah. All right. Last one, Kev. Ready? All right. 9 for 9. Let's see if you get them all. All right. How do you determine the lump sum number that's estimated that you need for retirement? So how do you determine the estimated lump sum number that you need to be able to, let's say, retire?
I remember it's math.
Mm-hmm.
It's an equation. And I feel like I feel like it might have been like, take the amount of money you can live on right now or that you expect to live on per year.
Mm-hmm.
And then it was multiply it by maybe 7 or maybe it was 10. I feel like you said something like rule of 7 or rule of 10. I also feel like it's just $1 million. I feel like it's also just, if you have $1 million, you're going to be fine. Who am I? I need a refresher on this one. I don't.
Okay. So you're going to take a 90 on this. Okay. On the quiz.
Hey, an A is an A, okay? A's all A.
A minus. All right. So for this one, and I think we did 2 episodes on this last season, which is even more embarrassing that you missed this, Kev. But this is a tougher part. My mom always says this was when she watches the podcast. Our one listener. No, we have a lot more folks than that. But she always says this is where I lose her on this one. So this is the basics. You take what you need in a typical month to live on. Okay.
In a typical month.
Yep, and you multiply by 12 to figure out your yearly expenses.
I'm doing this right now. Okay, got it.
So once you take that amount, you multiply that. You take that amount first, and then you subtract any expenses. I'm sorry, subtract. Let me start over with this. Okay.
We got to be clear for Mama Garrett. We got to get this down straight. Here we go.
So take what you typically spend per month that you're going to need in retirement, multiply by 12 to get your annual amount of money you need to live on.
Got it.
Then subtract any other income that you might be getting later on during retirement that you don't need to account for in your retirement investment accounts. This would be example, a pension for some people. You could include the Social Security that you might get in this. This might be if you might be giving an inheritance at some point in your life and they're going to be giving you, let's say, $5,000 a year. Anything like that where you don't need that lump sum to cover. All right. Then you take that number and multiply by 25. That's a lump sum that you would need in your retirement account being invested that you could safely, historically, pull that amount off of for the rest of your life and you'd still be able to live on. So just run a number on this. If you need $40,000 a year to live, all right, lower amount, say 40,000, multiply by 25, that's $1 million. Okay. So if once you have $1 million, you could theoretically pull $40,000 a year from your retirement account and it would be able to withstand the rest of your life.
Okay. I dig it.
Yeah.
I feel like I didn't get that right, but that does make sense. And so I guess the idea is like you just have enough money in an account that you can kind of live off the interest. Is that what we're kind of saying?
Kind of in its own way, yes.
Okay.
Yep. Okay.
All right. Justin, I accept your pop quiz and I accept an honorable 90. I'm curious if any of our listeners did better and got 100. I hope they did.
Yeah, I hope so too. The last thing, Kev, because that is 10 out of 10, and we have been going for a while today. It was wonderful to be back with you and everybody out there. Last season, we ended with a savings hack, usually at the end of each episode. So I did want to jump on one that I forgot to mention earlier in the episode. So for my traveling friends out there that like Southwest, if at any period of time over the last few years, specifically since COVID, you have had to cancel a flight, most likely Southwest has given you those dollars in the form of a voucher or in the form of travel credits. If you go on to southwest.com and log into your account, there is a new thing going on between now and December 31st because of COVID that you can log in. You can see how much money you have in that account from Southwest from previous flights that you didn't use. And they are allowing you to be able to convert those dollars to points. And what's nice about that is now those points don't have an expiration date and you can use them forever. So I highly recommend folks logging into their Southwest account, seeing if they have any dollars in there that were travel vouchers that they want to convert. I would highly recommend doing that because then you don't have to worry about an expiration date anymore because those points never expire.
Yeah, and for our listeners, I had 2 such vouchers that you guided me through last night, and I was able to convert them into something like 7,000 points in my account. I don't know when I'm going to fly again, but I know that whenever that is, I'm going to be grateful to have the points.
Yeah. I mean, just Southwest keeps getting better and better. So like these types of things they're doing to make everybody's life much easier during this period of time. And it's a really nice gesture that, we don't have to worry about expiration dates anymore on those dollars. So.
Yeah. Before we close this first episode of season 2, Justin, you want to give a little bit of a preview of some of the content we're going to be working through this season?
Sure. So we've got 10 episodes strong here. This is 1 out of 10 more to go. So our next episode, which I'm really excited about, and I wrote a lot when I was on my trip out in California, and I was next to, and I was in the national park called Redwoods. And I wrote a really, I think, nice piece that I want to share on investment lessons that we can learn from these trees. And there's a lot of metaphors involved, and I think it'll be really unique. And we haven't really dove into like my investment philosophy, and I think this will be a pretty cool way to do that using these mammoth trees out in California.
I love a metaphor.
Absolutely. The whole episode is going to be a metaphor, Kev.
Can't wait.
We are going to be diving a little bit more into the good and bad of credit cards at some point. We are going to be talking about buying versus leasing a car and the math behind that. We have 2 or 3 special guests that will be coming on. We really liked having Officer Miller on last season. So we've decided we're going to have a few new guests come on. And then, Kevin, your favorite episode is going to be on what?
So we're going to do a price comparison shopping type experience. And I know that we're going to definitely focus on Aldi's, which is our favorite. We have a Safeway near where we live in Baltimore that a lot of people love and go to a lot. And so we want to do some price comparison there. And I know we've been kicking around different ideas for a third one, but the most recent one that we chatted about was Walmart, which is thought of as being so cheap. I don't generally go there, but I'm curious. I'm hoping Aldi's comes out on top. Like that feels like a real contender to Aldi. So I'm looking forward to checking that out.
Awesome. Kev, today was a pleasure. You nailed the quiz, A on there. Good work. And I look forward to coming back together here next week.
I can't wait, Justin. And for all our listeners, as you continue listening and supporting, please be in touch with us. We're going to be looking into different apparatus to maybe allow for some communication with our listeners, but we would love you to check in with us, give us ideas, give us critiques, whatever comes to mind. Tell us how you did on this quiz. If any of you out there beat me, I want to know about it because I'm coming for you next time. Until then, Justin, I'll see you soon, okay?
All right. See you, Kev.
Bye.